Hello, my dear folks, my dear audiences. Welcome to the East-West Show with Jack Chow as your host. We're on G&E TV, 44.9, your lovely channel. Every time you turn on, there's info for you. One way or the other, you'll find it useful. Right, good. Today joining me is my good friend, Mr. Ken Hemming. We are in a discussion about the Iraq situation. Iraq situation is something that we have been talking about ever since 2003, including the war part. When the war, quote unquote, ended, which of course to me never ended, right? And it's still on. We're still at war with Iraq. Even though we try to hug them, the hugging is very, very embarrassing. Sometimes we get a bullet from the back. We don't even know what's happening. So lots of soldiers died that way, and they die martyrs in a funny way. Right? They are young people.
Yes.
They're 18 to 22, and there are 4,200 something plus of life lost there, on top of 1 trillion of US dollars, very green. Each and every penny of it is the taxpayers' money. So
that's right.
So to my good friend, Mr. Ken Hemming, I extend my warm welcome on behalf of G&E TV for make yourself available on this tough issue.
Jack, you always know it's my joy to be with you and your viewers. I love you guys so much.
And I believe my audience is fall in love with you already.
I hope so.
They do that on a day-to-day basis.
I love every one of your viewers
especially
equally.
Looking at this handsome face, almost like
That's
me.
a problem, but
all right. It's always good to start with a joke.
Absolutely.
And then we get serious on the business,
right.
on the issue, right? Now, lots of people started thinking at this moment about the Iraq situation by doing such a strategy or method in a manner of comparing what we are facing now and what we were facing back then prior to the war. So are we getting better? Are we getting worse? Or is the Iraq situation getting better? Or has it been worse since the war started, or even since the war, quote unquote, ended? Your take, please.
Well, I think one thing is you have to consider whether we still wish Saddam Hussein was there or not.
Do we not?
I prefer that he is not there. We did find 300 to 500,000 bodies of people he had killed. It's a valid question to say, and people will disagree on it. Do we care if 300 or 500,000 people that are not on American soil die? I do, but you know, not everybody does. So we all have I respect everybody's opinion equally. But I think, you know, when there's a real dictatorship, there is some stability in the region, and you have to put up with some very bad things.
Sure.
And so what happened, I personally, you know, I remember clearly, as you do, Colin Powell testifying at the United Nations. I don't think he intentionally lied about weapons of mass destruction.
Excuse me for one
insertion.
Sir. One insertion.
Thank you.
Let's establish one philosophy.
Yes, sir.
Just establish one thing before we move on to about how the war started.
Yes, sir.
Right? Now, are we seeing a better picture about Iraq, or are we seeing a worse picture or worsening picture?
Yeah, I think there's a great experiment happening right now as we sit here, and that is they are trying to get a coalition government formed over there.
No, you are not answering my question.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Man, the reason they are trying to get a coalition because they are facing something, right?
Correct,
The
yes.
something being the picture I'm
Right.
talking about.
Right.
Are we facing a good picture or worse picture or whatever picture than back then the war started?
Well, I think it's less stable than it was before, okay, before the war started. I think
Less stable.
Less stable.
That's the word.
Right. So therefore you could say maybe it's not.
Can we say more turmoiled?
Absolute turmoil.
More disastrous?
Absolute turmoil
All right.
and absolute chaos.
Oh, absolute chaos.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So, all right. Now, with that established as a foundation of this discussion,
Yes.
we now go back to the year of 2003 or before, prior to 2003,
Yes.
to compare these two pictures, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should we have the money and efforts and the life to lose or somewhere somehow? We would rather do somewhere else. Okay. Speaking of dictatorship, speaking of taking lives of the hundreds of thousands, right?
Yes.
How about Cambodia?
Pol Pot did not do a very warm and loving job
How
over
about
there.
North Korea?
You know, we don't
Right?
even have a clear picture of what's going on there, but we
Yeah,
know it's
exactly,
horrible.
Exactly.
But
Should we have a reason to launch Iraq war just for that Saddam Hussein has killed so many? Why don't we? Why wouldn't us have also invaded Cambodia or even North Korea to make things right?
Well, Cambodia and Vietnam War, they're neighbors.
And in Vietnam too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it was a concern about the spread of communism.
Sure.
And, it's an imperfect world with 7 billion people with a lot of evil in hearts of many of the people, okay, which is very sad.
When we ended the Vietnam War, did we see a better Vietnam than before the war?
I think it's a good question because right now I have a lot of friends that go to Vietnam on vacations and everything, and it's a communist-run government, but you're over there, you're feeling pretty free, and if you stay out of trouble, you're fine.
Yeah.
So it's I think it's a stable country right now, quite stable.
So can we say that history starts to teach us a lesson? Every war out of the territory of the United States that we get involved gets us a worse picture than war started. Can we do that?
I think we have to agree or disagree. Is America a leader in the world?
No.
Yeah,
Don't
okay.
drag away from the issue.
Okay.
The issue is that do we find or can we find any examples of war to indicate that once we get in, we launch a war,
Yes.
it brings us a better picture than it before?
Yes, I can.
Which one? Which
Germany,
war?
Japan, Italy, World War II.
No. World War II is the war Americans went in as one of the countries in the coalition. I'm talking about U.S.
that's true, yeah.
U.S. alone solely created the war that is solely created by U.S.
Well,
Can
yes,
we
the
get
Civil
an
War.
example?
The Civil War.
No. I'm talking about
Okay, all
war
right.
out of the United States territory. The overseas wars, the offshore wars.
Well, I'm not able to accept the thought that everything we have done that has involved arms in troops overseas that we've been a primary participant in has been a mistake and a failure. I'm not able to embrace that thought. Now,
Neither am I.
okay.
Neither am I.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, Ken, of course, we may argue, right?
Oh.
It looks to me the more argue, the more
Maybe are clear.
enhanced are the friendship, the clearer the picture.
Yeah,
right?
the
Okay,
clearer
now-
the picture.
Yeah, sure.
Because that's why two minds are.
I am pinpointing my analysis
Mm-hmm.
to one fact. All those wars, about all those wars, there are groups of interest involved.
Well, yeah, you're right. And I also do think, though, that America cannot live with a fully isolationist attitude. Because in the way
I know.
yeah,
I know. I understand
we
that
just
part.
can't. And if America doesn't lead, which I don't think we're doing very strongly right now, chaos happens. That's what happens. We pulled out of Iraq after we really had a somewhat of a stable thing.
Yes. Chaos happens, right? The thing is that if you end a war, you see a better picture.
And they don't end. That's the problem.
You see a better picture.
Yes.
And that indicates the war was necessary. Right?
Yes.
Now you don't see it. You see something on the contrary, 180 degrees. You see it even worse. What does that indicate to us?
Well, what it indicates to me is we should have left troops in Iraq to provide the stability that was necessary.
Oh yeah, there's another point.
Yes, sir.
There's another point, Laurie. Once you're, if it still allows you to be sober-minded to think about if you should or should not do it, of course there is an argument to talk about, right? So should we get in? Should we get out?
Yeah.
Right. Once you're in it, the only way is that you keep on going to make sure things ended up that way. Should it take like 2 decades, 3 decades, 100 years? Go on.
Well, I just came up in my mind with the prime example where we got into a war, and I think the country that we were in, which I will mention instantly, is way better off. The world is better off, and that's the Korean War. And we still have, I don't know, 40,000, 80,000 troops in Korea, and it's been 40 years. So, or more, maybe 50. So that's a real good point. But I think that's an example. And right now, if we pulled all of our troops out of South Korea, there's a big problem from North Korea.
Why? Well, that's how
there still is now. Also,
they drag us very thin, right? They drag us thin. We're thinner than before.
Right? You mean with our presence in South Korea?
Yeah,
of
we're
course,
thinner than before.
Much
right?
thinner.
Cooking now. So the problem is my whole thing. For the past 10 minutes, my whole point is to make one clear that we shouldn't have waged the war. And yet, once the war is waged, you are not supposed to withdraw halfway.
That's
even
right.
if it's a wrong war.
That's right.
Okay, now,
I agree with that.
Number one, can we confirm it is a wrong war? It's a war that has no ground. It's a war of unlegitimacy.
Well, it depends which one you're referring to.
Talking about the Iraq War.
You know, we probably sort of disagree on that. I think it had legitimacy, and I think with the explosion of technology, it makes the world so much smaller, and we are at tremendous risk.
Right now.
Yeah.
You mentioned Colin Powell about his intention to lie or not to lie, right?
Yeah, I don't believe he
lied.
lied.
Let me tell you one thing, man.
Yes, sir.
My brother.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, nowadays technology, okay, a satellite can tell you and an apple which is ripe or not.
Absolutely.
Okay? And the satellite
How many bites?
can tell you a soldier has shaven or not in the morning.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah. The satellite you can read
and the satellite can tell what kind of eye a certain soldier is. With such a technology, do you think you can fail to make your judgment in whether Saddam Hussein has the massive destruction weapon?
Yes, I do. But I also think there were things that were so indicative. Our CIA, our spy network and whatever, has a series of failures. And that's very sad, okay?
Oh, no, all right, okay.
Like 9/11, too.
I understand.
Didn't have to happen.
I understand. Series of failures, sometimes the failures are failures, sometimes failures are not failures.
Sometimes that's right.
Sometimes the failures are excuses. Do you agree with me?
Sometimes people maybe have their head in the sand and don't want to see the reality.
Exactly.
Right.
All right. So with my good friend Ken Hamming, we started a discussion, which is, of course, we're not talking about the news. We're talking about the legitimacy of the Iraq War, which we're seeing a tale of it. Call a tale of it. Somebody call a start of it.
Yeah.
So let's see. Right. So stay with us. We'll be right back.